Hello, this is the Right Wing Populist, and you are listening to the Right Wing Populist Podcast. Today, I want to talk about the amazing, tremendous news that we got a ceasefire. Trump got a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and it's great news. Now, the news broke yesterday afternoon, and I was thinking of doing sort of a breaking news podcast, but I wanted to, I was a little concerned about the ceasefire not lasting, so I wanted to wait until the morning. And it did look a little rocky a couple hours ago, but I think we're good. I think at least for a while, the ceasefire is going to hold. The reason why it was looking rocky for a little bit is that once the ceasefire was in effect, Iran, I guess allegedly, or they did, send like one more rocket towards Israel that didn't end up, hitting anything. And then Israel was sending a bunch of jets with bombs over to Iran as retaliation, I suppose. And then Trump lost his shit. He posted on Truth Social, let me get it right now. He said, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do it, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And also, he was being interviewed this morning while I think he was headed to a NATO summit. And he was asked about the potential break in the ceasefire, and this is what he had to say.
That Iran violated the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to cease?
Yes, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. You understand that?
He's such a legend. So you could tell Trump was a little angry this morning because it did look like the ceasefire may be teetering, but later, I don't have the audio, I don't think, but later, went on Air Force One, flying over to the NATO summit, Trump did confirm that the Israeli jets with bombs did turn around and that the ceasefire is in effect, so it looks like at least in the short term, we're good. And it's amazing news. I was very concerned about Trump sort of, breaking his promise to not get us into any Middle Eastern regime change wars, but it looks like he did. He did keep his promise. It frankly looks like Trump may have pulled off, frankly, an amazing foreign policy maneuver. If nothing escalates and we get to peace and what we end up is Iran's nuclear capabilities greatly diminished, with no regime change war and no American soldiers being dead, honestly, that's a W. That's a W. I don't think we needed to bomb those nuclear facilities this past weekend. But look, to be fair, even though I am more or less an isolationist, that sort of has a dirty connotation, but I don't care. That's basically what I am. I'm not saying you can never use the military, obviously, but generally speaking, I definitely lean isolationist at the very least. But I understand the arguments for why it's not good, certainly in Israel's interest, but even the United States' interest for Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They do fund a lot of terrorism. They've killed Americans and Israelis, but they've killed Americans importantly. And we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. I understand that. We don't want any country really to develop new nuclear weapons in a sense. Nuclear weapons are not good for the world. I mean, you can make an argument, I guess, that nuclear weapons in a sense have made the world more safe because it sort of creates a barrier to conflict in a sense. I mean, it's maybe not a coincidence that we haven't had a major world war since we dropped, the bombs on Japan. If you think that's a coincidence, I think that's a little naive. So in a sense, I think, I even in college, I did a big essay about this. I was a little controversial. My professor didn't agree, but my professors never agreed with me. That was my life in college, dealing with these stupid professors telling me I was wrong when I was right. But, c'est la vie. But the argument is actually very simple, that actually nuclear weapons sort of help us keep us out of greater conflicts. I mean, the Cold War probably wouldn't have been a Cold War if neither the US or Russia had nukes. Think of it, just think of it like that. But regardless, I understand the arguments for why we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And if this whole 12-day war, as Trump called it, ends with us not getting deeper involved in a Middle Eastern country and Iran's nuclear capabilities greatly diminished, again, that's a W. Look, I care more about results than I care about ideology. And if this really was sort of 4D chess by Trump, hats off to you, man. I shouldn't have doubted you. I shouldn't have been a panicking. I was a panicking. I was panicking. Maybe the White House officials posting the trust Trump memes were right. Maybe we should have trusted Trump all along. Now, I will be honest, I'm not exactly sure this was 4D by Trump. I'm really not sure about that. I think, this could have gone either way in terms of us actually going full-on regime change war. I think you have to give a lot of credit to people like Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk to some degree, people like Richard Bears, people like Robert Barnes. You have to give these individuals credit because they were putting a lot of they were countering the neocon pressure that Trump was seeing on Fox News. Because all Trump was saying these last 2 weeks about how great it would be to bomb Iran and how great it would be to have regime change. That's frankly the terrible thing about Tucker no longer being on Fox News is Trump doesn't really see any anti-war voices on Fox News anymore. That's probably, at least in certain respect, why Rupert Murdoch axed Tucker. Because he's probably sick of seeing his anti-war voice on his network that he uses to promote war. So, but I think, Steve Bannon did have lunch with Trump, I believe on Friday. And, Steve Bannon, I think, made clear on his War Room broadcast after that he strongly suggested we don't get bogged down into another, Middle Eastern war. And it looks like Trump took his advice, at least to some degree. So I'm very happy about this. It's very good to see that Trump took the off-ramp. It does seem like this could just be a situation like when Trump killed Soleimani. I don't know, for those who don't remember, during Trump's first term, we assassinated or took out, whatever the correct term is, took out an Iranian general, Soleimani, who had killed Americans. He was a bad guy. But, I was concerned, and a lot of MAGA people were concerned at the time that this would escalate into a big war with Iran. But after we assassinated Soleimani, Iran just responded with a very symbolic response to us. And nothing happened. Nothing escalated. Iran essentially did the same thing yesterday. They responded to us by attacking like a Qatari base we had, or a Qatar base. Qatar. I don't even know why we have all these bases in Qatar and Iraq, but that's for a different podcast. But they bombed those bases while giving Qatar and the U.S. a heads up so there would be no people at these bases, so there'd be no death. It was a totally symbolic response. And that's when I knew that Iran was essentially giving Trump an off-ramp to not escalate. And Trump took it. And he got a ceasefire done. And it looks like, after a little trepidation this morning, it looks like the ceasefire is gonna hold. So again, I think this is a major Trump W. I'll take responsibility for not trusting Trump like I probably should have. Again, I've been a supporter for 10 years. But again, there needed to be public pressure on the administration. We did not want them to pull a George W. Bush and destroy his presidency by getting us bogged down into a regime change Middle Eastern war. So, Trump needs pushback sometimes. He's not perfect. He makes mistakes. He made a lot of mistakes in his first term. And we're trying to make sure he doesn't repeat those same mistakes in his second term. So his second term is even better. So again, shout out to all the MAGA influencers. I think we really made an impact. It's great to see. Now, the question is Israel... I'm more concerned about Israel violating the ceasefire than Iran. I got to be honest, Iran's arguably been the most rational actor between the U.S., Israel, and them. I mean, their response to us taking out their nuclear facilities, at least allegedly taking them out. Who knows how much damage the U.S. actually did, but their response to that was so measured. I mean, they've been looking for off-ramps. They've been negotiating, I think, in good faith at times when I don't think the U.S. was negotiating in good faith. For this country that everyone says, oh, they would nuke the United States, they're an irrational actor. I don't know. Whenever Iran is given a choice between an off-ramp or escalation, they always take the off-ramp, it seems. They seem to be a very rational actor. Frankly, it does make me question, again, these Armageddon claims that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they're going to bomb New York. They're going to bomb Israel. They're going to bomb Tel Aviv. I just don't see that in their behavior. They seem to be relatively rational. And to the extent they are trying to get a nuclear weapon, to me, again, that's them acting rationally. Because they saw what Obama and his administration, Hillary Clinton, did to Gaddafi in Libya. When he gave up his nuclear weapons, we overthrew him anyway. After Gaddafi did everything the West wanted him to do, we still overthrew him after he got rid of his nuclear weapons. So if you're the Ayatollah, you're Iran, why would you not want a nuclear weapon then? It's not like you can trust the West, and that's your best, deterrent from regime change is having nuclear weapons. That's why, Trump couldn't get a long-term deal with Kim Jong-un in North Korea during his first term, because Kim Jong-un was like, Trump, you're not going to be here forever, and once I give up my nukes, I'm cooked. So the Ayatollah in Iran, if they are trying to get a nuclear weapon, they're just acting rationally. Again, this whole time, I just feel like Iran's been acting very rationally. So, it does make me question these old claims, if they get a nuclear weapon, they're going to bomb. The only reason they would nuke the United States is if they were an irrational actor. And at least in terms of this conflict between Israel and us, they seem to be pretty rational. That may not be politically correct to say, but I just think it's the reality. They seem like a relatively rational actor. So, but again, I'm not saying it'd be good for them to get a nuclear weapon. They do fund terrorism. They do these proxies. It was probably them who funded the October 7th attack in Israel, those horrific attacks. This now led to this terrible conflict in Gaza. So I'm not a fan of Iran. I'm not a fan of them at all. And I do not think it's in the U.S. interest for them to give a nuclear weapon. That's why I think Trump really may have pulled off a major W. If we really did decimate their we really set back Iran's nuclear facilities back several years. No Americans are dead. No major regime change war. That's a major W. I'll take it. Even if it wasn't 4D chess and Trump's just looking for an off-ramp, I'll take that too. I don't care. I'm just happy we're not escalating this. And I think the ceasefire will hold. Trump was very, as I played in the clip, Trump does not usually criticize Israel the way he did. When Trump drops the F-bomb, he's pissed. He was pissed at Israel this morning. And the reporting is he called Netanyahu and basically made it clear to him that we're the superpower, you're not. You're subservient to us, not the other way around. You need to turn around those fucking planes. And it looks like Bibi got a line and did that. So overall, very good news. Very happy to see. I guess the White House was right. We have to trust Trump. Don't be a panikin. Trust Trump. So very good news. Hopefully the ceasefire holds. But to me, it's clear that Trump did not want to get us bogged down into a war. With boots on the ground, which I even said yesterday, to be fair, that I think Trump ultimately does not want to do a regime change war. And he even said, I believe, on Air Force One, that he doesn't want regime change because that always leads to chaos. And he's exactly right. Regime change usually leads to chaos. Look at Iraq, look at Libya, look at Syria. It usually leads to chaos. So, very good news. Shout out to number 45 and 47. You did a great job, Mr. President. Now, keep Israel in line. Keep Iran in line, but I think the biggest threat to the ceasefire is really Israel. So make sure, do what you did this morning, and keep Israel in line. Anyway, that's it for today. I think please subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you enjoyed the podcast and you want it to grow and you want longer episodes, tell your friends to subscribe. The more the audience grows, the more I'll invest in this podcast. The viewership's been great. The last 3 weeks, over 12,000 views, close to 13,000 views on all the platforms. I really appreciate it. Even the hate comments, I like the hate comments. And by the way, if the ceasefire does hold, I'm doing a video on Zelensky because Zelensky seemingly made a fool out of himself, saying, oh, this ceasefire is fake. Well, it looks like the ceasefire is going to hold for a while. So again, Kyle Zelensky proved what an idiot he is. He is an idiot. I don't care what anyone says. So anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.